2 years after the timber harvest, that I'd take a walk. It's been a while since I posted. Of course, I have to walk on the hottest day of the year so far at 99. A new record, by the way, but I've been still working at invasives, but it only seems to be in patches. So I always wanted to know what conditions would look like within 2 years after harvest. Still some stilt grass left, but again, a reminder that it just seems to be only in patches. Where we were able to control the stilt grass, just notice how quickly it fills in. We're talking mostly blackbriar, anywhere from, I'd say, 5 to 6 feet tall. There is still some stilt grass in there, but from what I've been learning, if you can get something to climb above the stilt grass, you pretty much can get it controlled. So we're going to have to spray some of this. I'll be using clethodim, which is just a grass killer, and that should limit any injury with any of those broadleafs. We've got some poplars in there. That should be fine for those poplars. You can easily see why stilt grass can become a problem very, very quickly. Just look at the thick matting that we have. Nothing is really going to be able to challenge this with the thick matting of the stilt grass. If you can control that, sooner the better. The easier it is for stuff like pokeberry and those blackbriars to come up and get above those the stilt grass. That certainly will help. Here's an area that had a bad infestation of mile a minute. You can still see the remnants of the vines from last year. Just covered everything, prevented any growth of any other type of species. So came in this spring in May. I sprayed that with Plateau, which does remove the mile a minute, also removes stilt grass. It shouldn't kill the blackbriars and other vegetation. If you notice, there certainly is a setback in some of that vegetation, so it did not kill it. It probably will just hold on through this year before it can maybe get some better growth moving into next year, but that mile a minute certainly is something that needs to be taken care of as quickly as possible so you can get back to a good native regeneration. Still see more of that blackbriars. Stunted, but not necessarily dead. There's a noticeable difference in understory growth. Once you get under a group of trees, if you notice the top, we do have less sunlight reaching the ground, more desirable trees that we did leave. We got a red oak, we've got a hickory, 2 red oak. Behind me we've got a chestnut oak. And you see there's not quite as much growth underneath this canopy. But as soon as you open it up and you can get much greater sunlight to the ground, a huge difference. I mean, it is just thick. Take a look. And I know there is some tree regrowth underneath. As a matter of fact, I see some sassafras here. There's more sassafras. We do have some birch that's coming up. But certainly blackbriar is desired. We've got pokeberry. Deer nipping at the pokeberry. We do have a leftover stump here. Red maple. Completely chewed the top off of there. I see a little bit of fern. Not too concerned, knowing that we do have a lot more other growth. It'd be nice to see if I could peek through and find more seedlings, more tree seedlings, because I know they're in here. I saw them earlier in the spring before the briars really took over. But big difference when you're looking at tree removal. The more canopy that you can remove, the more growth you're certainly going to get. So by thinning and only taking some trees out, you don't seem to get as much dense regeneration and cover as you would if you can open it up a lot more. Moving forward, I would certainly look into more heavier cuts. At least 60% tree removal. I would probably lean closer to 70-80% tree removal in order to achieve some faster and dense growth that we see taking shape here behind me. Another note about this timber cut, the more acreage you can cut, the less deer pressure and deer damage you're going to see following. This was about 50 acres, and again, it was a pretty heavy cut, taking nearly all of the junk trees, your birches, your maple. I shouldn't say junk. How about undesirable? Lot of red maple stump sprouts, which is obviously good and thick. As a matter of fact, we're coming up to some of them. This is what they're looking like. There's your maple 2 years later, stump sprouts. We've got a white oak, well, black oak behind me, a red oak behind me. We've got white oak. I'm sure if I look in there, there'd be some seedlings popping through. But going back to the amount of acreage, really glad we did one large cut instead of cutting it up into pieces. It was also more attractive to loggers to bring in the amount of equipment that's necessary to do a significant cut like this with the right kind of machinery. It was a processor, which is sort of like a feller buncher, and also a forwarder, which doesn't allow any dragging of these trees. Just picked it up. But now I went and sprayed this just to walk through earlier, and this was one of those logging trails, and you can see it was stilt grass, so still working on removing any invasives that I can. You get outside of this logging road, and again, I'm seeing more poplar. There's birch, but this is really nice. I mean, this is what we were hoping for. Very thick, very dense cover. Something else I learned: the quicker you can get rid of the invasives and the quicker you can stop using glyphosate or any type of herbicide, the faster the rebound. If you have to keep using glyphosate, which is what I did in this location here, we had fern. I still see some leftover fern and spots. If you look close enough, it just must have been a deer that was bedded in here. Scared me. All right, there was some fern, but I do see poplar that's now coming up, and this will come back quickly based on my experience, but it's probably going to take 2 years for that to happen. So using the herbicide in areas that you have to, and quickly allowing that regeneration to occur. I mean, you can see where I stopped spraying. I mean, it is just, it's thick. So something you want to do, or if you can just maybe do like a target species, like a grass only, which is what I'm going to be doing over here. We've got some stilt grass that's returning. I'll be using clethodim, putting on my backpack sprayer shortly to knock that. And hopefully this will jump certainly within the next year, but in 2 years it should look just like what we see behind me, where it's anywhere from chest to head height. I'm 6 feet, so it's a lot thicker and a lot more dense cover and new growth. Here's another great example of what stilt grass can do. When you look around, I mean, it's just nothing but a dense blanket of that grass, and there is just nothing that can really push out of there. This was more than likely one of the logging roads that they used for the tracks to go back and forth, but even down here where the stilt grass was able to take hold, there's just nothing growing. You can control that stilt grass, you can control those invasives. All of a sudden you get a huge burst of growth. Fern is another problem that we have here, which I did hit initially. Seems like once you can hit it the first time, it disappears, but this is a patch that I did miss. This is what 80% of this area looked like before the cut. Almost all fern. So I'm gonna have to hit that with glyphosate. That'll knock that and unfortunately everything else down around it, but it's only about a 12 by 12 area.